When we left Aqua Yacht on Friday, June 20th, we had planned just to go out and anchor out for the night. We didn't even leave until about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So we had an anchorage planned at Goat Island and decided to go there and try out the new Manus anchor before we got on the Tombigbee waterway. We were unfortunately denied our first anchorage and our second and our third. As it was a Friday, everything was already kind of booking up. So we just looked around the lake for a little while, and eventually we were able to find an anchorage at Yellow Creek Island. It was a pretty tiny, narrow anchorage, but pretty deep. Room for just one boat, really. So we anchored in there, and the Mantis set immediately. We got in the dinghy. The boys paddled around in the dinghy for the rest of the night, and they enjoyed a very secure, snug sunset as we prepped for the next day. I was really excited to get a good night's sleep, and just so thankful that we have an anchor that we can trust now going forward. So we settled in for the night and got ready for the big day ahead. On Saturday, June 21st, we would be headed down on the first part of the Tombigbee waterway, known as the Ditch, on our way to Bay Springs. Our new Mantis anchor held perfectly through the night. As Ray would say, no one is bleeding and no one is crying, which is a new anchoring experience for us. So it was really nice to get a good night's sleep and be ready to go on this next part of the journey. We got up, we enjoyed the quiet of the morning. I woke up at 6, went ahead and made breakfast burritos, and we were able to pull up the anchor afterward without any issue, and we're getting ready to head out of the cove by just a little after 7, so we'll count it a success as we get underway. As we started to leave, the engine sounded a little rough and clanky, so I threw it in reverse, and everything seemed to be fine after that. So I would feel good about it if I wasn't scared I would actually jinx the day with that thought. But at any rate, we got underway, and soon we were passing Goat Island, and we were delighted to find that this Goat Island was a little different from the Goat Islands that we've seen on literally every other river system and lake. Actual Goat Island. Yep, we could see the actual goats. All those little white dots over on the hillside there. Those are goats on Goat Island. So finally one that's appropriately named. Literally everywhere else we've been, we've seen Goat Islands, never any goats. Soon after passing Goat Island, we continued down the straight stretch of the lake and finally came to a corner where I noticed there was a bridge going across. And this is a bridge that we went across multiple times during our 2-week stay at Aqua Yacht. Finally, we were getting ready to go under the bridge, and finally we would begin the second part of our journey, headed down the Tombigbee waterway. The Tombigbee waterway, also known as the Tenn-Tom, is a 234-mile portion of river system that was developed to connect the Tennessee River with the Black Warrior River system leading out into the Gulf. So we were getting ready to start on the portion known as the Divide Cut, or the Ditch, which is about, I think, between 27 and 29 miles long, and it's just kind of a straight shot of man-made dugout canal that actually required a lot of excavation, comparable to the Panama or Suez canals. While I have been absolutely looking forward to eventually getting to saltwater, I've got to say I've really enjoyed our river trip so far, and the ditch and the rest of the Tenn-Tom were to be no exception to that. once again made it under the bridge. I still check most of the time, but here we are. Now we are on the ditch. Welcome to the ditch.
We're in the ditch.
A whole new part of the adventure.
We're in the ditch.
There were all kinds of new sights along this part of the trip. There were these that we originally thought might be some kind of like salmon ladder, but it appears that it's mostly just to catch larger debris that's coming into the waterway. But pretty cool to see. It was like this lovely little waterfall system, and something that we hadn't heard anything about or hadn't expected. Also, because this part of the river is such a nice long straight shot, we were able to give the boys lots of time to take turns at the helm, which was great. They have learned new skills and grown skills along the trip as well. So it was wonderful to get to see them taking time to do some new things and to continue to grow. It was really a pretty lovely, relaxed, easy start to this portion of the trip, and to be honest, I was ready for it. I feel like we've had enough of all of the unexpected. It was nice to have something kind of go according to plan. And so the day continued in that way for quite a while. We just kept chugging along at a straight shot and making the most of the day. It was probably around 1 o'clock before we started to see any change. So it was a nice 4 or 5 hours of just easy going and relaxed pace. New sights continued to pop up along the way. Occasionally we would see these areas where there were spillways from overflow or from other areas, and the barn swallows and things absolutely loved those. We would frequently see just flocks of the little birds hovering in those areas and realize as we came by them why. There was not only a nice water flow, so water access there, but also the little roofs provided great places for them to make their nests. So really a nice example of how even something man-made becomes a provision for the nature in the area. They were really pretty too. Like I said, the flowing water was like these little man-made waterfalls along the way, and definitely added to the natural beauty that was already in the area. So as we made our way perilously under the power lines, I went to start making lunch while we continued on our journey. While the water wasn't the crystal clear blue that everyone hopes for on a sailboat trip, this part of the river provided its own beauty. It was just really peaceful and very relaxing. Oh, here's another one of those debris catchers, and I think actually as we pass this one, you'll see a good portion of it isn't even able to allow water down because it's got some really big trees and limbs stacked up at the top. So that's what they're designed to do, to let the water through and to keep those big mats and rafts of debris from getting into the waterway, because that absolutely is a concern when you're moving down a narrow passage like this. At any rate, we continued on, enjoying all the new sights. Just moments after I took this portion of the video, I put my phone back downstairs because if the battery was dying. It seems like there's always too much to film and never enough battery, but at any rate, we saw 3 minks running down the edge of the river here, which was our first time getting to see them on the river system, so that was pretty exciting. Unfortunately, I didn't catch it on film, but it was still pretty cool. And then shortly after that, the waterway started to open back up, and we had reached the top of Bay Springs Lake. Bay Springs is a reservoir lake in Mississippi, and while it's only 9 miles long, unlike the reservoir lakes that we are used to up in Tennessee that are 40 and 60 miles long, this is a really wide lake with lots of different anchorages and little coves and things to explore. So I was really hoping that we would have a little more time actually to be out on Bay Springs Lake, but we have been checking the weather and realized that we have a pretty short weather window to make it down to Mobile Bay. We actually only have about 5 days of good weather, and this day, getting from the top of the Tenn-Tom waterway down to the bottom of Bay Springs Lake was day 1. So we wouldn't have the time to go around and explore all of the beautiful spots on the lake, but I am hopeful that we will make it back there sometime and get to spend a little bit more time looking around. The lake truly was beautiful. So we anchored in a little cove on the back side of the Bay Springs Visitor Center. It was really cool. We had a little nest of ospreys on top of the little building back there, so that was pretty cool, something fun to watch. The babies were getting just big enough that they could fly but not really hunt for themselves yet, so we got to watch the mom and the dad both take off and feed themselves and feed the babies. We almost immediately got in the water as soon as we had the anchor set, which again was easy. We dropped the mantis, it set immediately, so that was nice, and then we got in the water because it was blazing hot. I'm definitely starting to notice the shift as we go farther south. The days are getting warmer, and the feels like temperature, according to our weather app, is really a significant change. So we're going to have to try to figure out how to keep cool, because sometimes the fans just don't feel like they're quite cutting it. At any rate, we got in the water, we enjoyed the evening, we enjoyed the ospreys. There's a small boat ramp and park just across the entrance to this little cove. So that's going to be an area where we can go over and hopefully use the restrooms, drop off some trash, and make the most of this little anchorage. Just outside of the anchorage is the Jamie Whitten Lock, which is going to be a pretty fun one to go through. It is a 90 or 95 foot drop, so that will be a big lock. Something I'm looking forward to experiencing, because when we came through Wilson, the primary lock, if you'll recall, was down, so we used the 2 auxiliary lock system and didn't get to come through the big drop. So kind of excited to see that. And then tomorrow we have 4 locks on tap. So the next day is going to be a pretty busy day. With that said, we were ready to call it a day and call it a success. Our first day on the Tenn-Tom, the Tombigbee waterway, was easy. But you know what that means for our channel. When we have a good easy day, it means the next day is likely to come back and bite us good. And boy, does it. So, we'll see you next time. In the meantime, thanks for watching.